Dr. Will Sheppard is the Assistant Director for University Housing West Campus, Director of the Black Male Excellence Initiative, and adjunct faculty for first-year seminar and College of Education. Dr. Sheppard's passion is research resulting in practical solutions for the overall success for students of color and first-generation college students. Dr. Brandy Bryson is an associate professor in the Leadership and Educational Studies Department. She is the Director of Inclusive Excellence for Academic Affairs and a faculty in residence. Dr. Bryson is a sociologist of race and education and studies the intersection between race, socioeconomic status, and educational opportunity and experience. Dr. Sheppard and Dr. Bryson, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Roxy, for that great introduction. Appreciate that. Again, we're going to expand on our research that we did from the recap lightning round a few minutes ago. Again, we're so happy to be here to talk about our research and findings and going forward. So we're going to be talking about Black Male Brilliance, success for first-year Black men, implications for higher education, that you can have some takeaways from this that we can give you and go forward. Brandy, did you have anything before we get started?
I could just add that in my role as Director of Inclusive Excellence, I do have the ability to, gauge some of our data to see how we're doing in terms of serving our students, and that data can get, we often disaggregate that data by demographics and identity information, particularly when we look at meeting needs of our underrepresented students. So we know that we have a very low number of Black males on our campus, and we do know that they bring a lot of strengths. And we also know that the challenges of being Black at a predominantly white institution requires us to also make sure that we have support mechanisms in place. And our data on this campus show that. So I think that this is important information for all folks at Appalachian State to hear and to know.
So as we go through this presentation, you're going to see two, research studies that had, like I said, had transitioned from one to the other and so forth. So again, at the end, if you have any questions about things, please let us know. Purpose of this study was for us to look at the skills, habits, and characteristics and relationships for high achieving Black males. And so at HBCUs, we did focus groups with 26 of them from five HBCUs in North Carolina. Dr. Bryson and I got in the van and we took a week-long trip across the state, going from hotel to hotel, and a lot of snacks for participants and each other to get this data. So it was a great trip. So this research was so timely because of things that are happening in our nation and in higher ed, that we're trying to make sure that our students of color and particularly our Black males are having success overall in higher education. So we want to counter the narrative that has long lived about Black men not being learners or brilliant, successful learners. And so we want to elevate what we offer in our article as well as a takeaway that we've written. So defining Black male brilliance, what is this concept? So Black male brilliance comprises common attributes of academic success that we've seen that students come in for higher education. They come in with high levels of academic ethic. That's that discipline that they have to get things done that they need to do to be successful. So they're looking at those pro-school values to say, this is what I'm bringing into schools or in higher education. And also, there are things that I need to learn when I get there as well. So one of the things we looked at is motivation, what's keeping them going, persistence, what's going to keep them going as they continue through their years, especially during that first year that is so critical? And what are the sacrifices that they have to give, not from only just being first year in college, but from where they come from? What are the things that they have to give up, have to look at to get to where they want to be, and the discipline to keep going? What are the things they have to learn to maintain that discipline that we want them to do? These high academic success attributes also look at persistence through damaging racial stereotypes and racism, while also looking at maintaining a strong and positive sense of identity as Black men. And we'll talk more about that as we go.
So if we look at this definition, this defining Black male brilliance, it is all of these common attributes of success that we generally talk about in relation to high achieving students. So the motivation, persistence, sacrifice, discipline, plus overcoming these problematic barriers and these obstacles, particularly because of structural racism that Black men have. So that's why we called this Black male brilliance. This definition really came from these findings, and we're going to just present a couple of select findings here today. The first one was on disproving stereotypes or proving people wrong. This came up a lot, and there was a lot of pain in the participants' stories and their sharing around how they have to disprove stereotypes and prove people wrong. So the first one, this first example here is that the participants talked at length about how disproving stereotypes and proving people wrong really played a significant role in their persistence through difficulty. One participant quoted, "In society, it's harder for us because of the stereotypes that are placed on our shoulders day in and day out." They spoke about exceeding others' deficit expectations. One participant said, "It makes me feel accomplished when I exceed the expectations people have already set for me, even though they don't know a single thing about me." So really thinking about that, the issues there and the pain in those stories. That pain in their stories was really about systemic racism and about others' deficit perspectives that come from media, that come from social media, that come from socialization, from our families. And it was clear that these Black men had really learned to channel that pain into motivation and resiliency. And so one of the things that we actually kind of played with in our article, our first draft of our article, was this idea of success as revenge or success related to revenge. And we really kind of had to think through and talk through and got some good peer-reviewed feedback on that piece. And we didn't ultimately call it that, but that is some of the things that we sort of heard and alluded to. And we don't want anyone to feel like they have to be successful as a form of revenge to actually prove people wrong. So that was something that was really troubling for us in terms of our findings. The next couple of select findings here is their strength in their identities as Black men. They really had a strong sense of racial identity that intersected with a positive identity as men as well. One of them said, it's inspiring to see people that look like me be able to do great things. And that was really important for them to have that community and that camaraderie, as well as that representation, rather than that deficit notion and the deficit perspective. They were also very forward thinking. They demonstrated clear academic and career aspirations. They talked about making education a priority and really were committed to preparing for success. While they had all of these strengths, they were also very cognizant of their limitations. And we found that to also be a strength, to be cognizant of some of your limitations so that those things, you can have some intervention around those things if we're aware of those limitations. Math was one of the ones that kept coming up. Just math. One of my limitations is math. This was the main sort of discipline area or the field or the content area. And then working with groups comes with a little struggle because of the trouble with trusting others, navigating time constraints, and then limitations in their ability to cope with societal challenges, such as systemic racism and constant deaths that they were seeing in the news and in their communities for some of them, and then some of the limitations to cope with personal challenges, such as mental health, some pride, as well as some independence.
So during our focus groups and overall study, the participants gave some really good, strong implication recommendations for our staff and faculty. And so one thing they said was check our biases and assumptions about Black male students, assess our behaviors. So we know that we all come with biases, but they want to say, well, look at us as individuals when we come to you in your classrooms or in your space, and not just what we see from social media and so forth. Another was, are they grounded in painful stereotypes or deficit perspectives they mentioned? And then finally, we look at integrated our curriculum with positive reputations of Black people and Black men. So when faculty and staff are talking about examples or giving instructions on different topics, they want to see themselves represented in these scenarios. So they want to see their historical figures, their historical heroes, the inventors that have impacted our society, the scientists that have paved the way for a lot of advances to medical field, and then leaders that have shaped the path for many from different backgrounds to political to racial to you name it. Where are the leaders that are being role models for them? And then finally, intellectuals. Who are I would say the nerds out there that looks like them, that they can say, wow, they look like me. They are nerding out on these things that I love too. So I have the ability and the affirmation to do that as well. So we drew from Black male student success in their cultural community and wealth. So we want to make sure that they can pull from where they come from to get the motivation, that inner self-discipline to say, I can do this. And so we look at this next point here of provide Black male students with the space to process their challenging lived experiences with structural racism in advising, mentoring, office hours, class discussion, and programming. So not along with, as we're going through the pandemic and then how even their last year in high school was going and so forth, we look at how they went into the first year in schools, things of that nature. And so even though this was pre-pandemic, we still think about, well, how are they going into these classes in this environment now? And so, yeah. And continuing the implications and recommendations, since they're forward thinking, they're thinking about their future, they're thinking about their classes, they're thinking about the career and helping out their family and community going forward. They want to create structures and opportunities to identify, explore strengths and weaknesses that they have in their academic skills, both past and present. So what they brought from high school, what they need to learn in higher education to be successful. And then also the demonstrated a strong belief they could succeed with hard work, with study habits, and following through on school assignments. And these are some of the things we looked at as helping them articulate their failures and successes and work through time management and not be shamed and also be empowered instead of shamed. Then work closely with the Student Learning Center and supplemental instruction. This was huge for them to make sure they're on the right path for academic success and learning those skills they need to go forward. They talked a lot about time management, procrastination. It sounds like, yeah, I get on 2K and I play, and one game turns into 10. And so then I have friends coming over and we all see that. And so they got to make sure they're disciplined to put down the sticks, as they say. We want to make sure that they articulate their behaviors and what they need to do and not spending these activities like I just said.
And I think the key piece with this last point that Dr. Sheppard made is that they spoke in broad and general terms about their limitations. So they might have said time management, some pride, some procrastination, but they really had a hard time articulating the specifics. They had a hard time really diving in and really being able to name their behavioral limitations, like spending 2 hours every night gaming, or avoiding an assignment due to uncertainty, about how to approach it, or taking on too many activities at one time. So in terms of thinking about how we can help them as educators, it's how do we help them articulate their strengths in very particular ways, but then how do we help them articulate their limitations in very specific ways? So if we can break those down and really operationalize those in a way that helps them to understand the behaviors that are showing up with the broad general themes of limitations, then that's what's going to provide us with the outlet as educators to help support them. And it's also going to help them in terms of being able to identify and create some of their own internal plans or their individual plans to be able to move forward and get the support that they need. The final components of the implications and recommendations that we'll present today, and there's a whole host of these. We talk about trauma, we talk about dealing with some of the systemic racism pieces in our article that I linked in the chat. But the last set of implications and recommendations we'll talk about is that institutions really need strong programs that draw from Black male students' assets and their cultural community wealth. And this is super important for us. So it's not just official programming and programs, but it's also the way that we show up as educators in our interactions and all of the things that we're doing in the curriculum that we're providing for students, and making sure that they can see themselves represented in that curriculum, as Dr. Sheppard mentioned earlier. And then we're going to end with these Black men, these participants made specific recommendations for educators. And for me as an educator and a teacher of teachers and an educator of educational leaders, this to me is like the goodies, right? This is very specific things. You know, Dr. Sheppard and I can bring implications and recommendations from our study, and we certainly did in our article. We like to hear from the guys too. Like, what are your recommendations for educators? This is what they said: be consistent, committed, and invested in our futures. Right? We want to see that you're committed, right? Continue to show up with that commitment. Develop intentional, meaningful relationships with us. This is very consistent in the research. We know that the most significant component of learning that contributes to a student's learning is the teacher-student relationship. The research is very clear on that. And they are also identifying that as well. So developing intentional, meaningful relationships with them, consistent care and commitment. This is what they look like. Consistent care and commitment are demonstrated by supporting us in good times, in hard times, imparting life lessons, right? So thinking about sort of this almost an alternative parental role, or an uncle or an aunt, or, you know, a big brother or big sister, and really imparting those life lessons. And then being intentional with regular check-ins. Interestingly, with the regular check-ins piece, you know, they said, show us some love, but also be patient in how we respond. We want you to love on us, but we have trouble trusting, right? All of these societal barriers, all of these experiences that we might have had with educators in our past, it makes us a little hesitant to trust. Keep showing up for us, keep checking in with us, and give us a little time. Be patient with us, and eventually we'll respond to you. Don't just give up if we don't respond right away. And then the last point that they made here is have faith in our ability to succeed and help us believe in our brilliance. So we need you to believe in our brilliance, but also know that we need support, and we want you to help us believe in ourselves and believe in our own brilliance, and really increase that self-motivation and that intrinsic belief that we can do it and we can succeed.
Okay, and so just a quick snippet, we did do a comparative study with this also to look at PWIs and see how, what are the commonalities of it too, and it was very, very close. to the same needs that they needed from PWIs and HBCUs. So it was great to see that. But like those implication recommendations say from staff and students, this is what you need. If you ever had the question, well, how can I help? Here it is right here. Thank y'all so much for letting us give this presentation. We definitely enjoyed doing this research. And so I guess we'll open it up for questions at this point.
Yes, thank you so much for a thought-provoking presentation. And if anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat box and I'll read them so that everyone can hear the question. And I have a question while we're waiting. Were there any surprises that you found in your data or in the overall research?
That's a good question. I think I didn't see surprises, but I think hearing the stories for some of the participants and what they had to overcome to get where they were to be successful were really powerful. There were so many. I know one. He was an athlete and just a lot of trauma before coming to college, but he had used all that trauma and pain to use it to be successful. And you can tell just by the focus group that we're having that he was happy to share it and hopefully help the other men in the group with what they were going through. And I think even though this was a focus group for the study, I actually think it helped them bond together in a group to understand that, oh, you're going through things as well. So it was really just powerful to hear their stories. Not surprised, but just powerful. Brandy, you may speak on that as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me was when we asked them their reason for selecting their particular HBCU. It wasn't surprising when they said, you know, we want to be in a community where we see, you know, really excellent, stellar people who look like us, who are smart and doing great things. That wasn't a surprise so much. I think what was really more of a surprise is that they selected their particular HBCU because of the majors that were offered, the variety of majors, and the opportunity that would come from those majors, as well as a really strong need for networking opportunities. That came up a lot. So not so much of a surprise. It just, I didn't enter the study with thinking that they may say, you know, that networking opportunity was so significant for them.
Okay. And Dr. Opata would like to know, have you tried to make a follow-up with them to see how they have navigated the hurdles that have made a change in their approach to continue being excellent?
No, we did not do that, a follow-up with them, but that would have been an excellent way to see how they had done that. As you know, that word, COVID, it happened. So we didn't get to do a lot of follow-up, but no, we just wanted to stick with them coming in that first year. But I think that would have been a great follow-up though.
Okay. And Lindsay Maslin's asking if she says, forgive me for any details I have incorrect, but I believe we have a new Black Male Brilliance focused dorm community. Is that correct? And have you all been able to utilize insights from your study in the building of that community?
Yes, our study is kind of what was born out of that study, seeing that, oh, these are the things that Black males need. And ironically, there's people even on this presentation now that are part of that. Dr. Howard's here, Dr. Opata, Mr. Lee Cope. So they have all, we've kind of circled together to look at how can we help the Black males that are coming into AppState in this manner. As we've been seeing, these are the things they did. So we did start that residential learning community to make sure they have those resources, those follow-ups, those staff that are committed to help them be successful in college as they're coming in now. So yes.
Okay. Dr. Caratan wanted me to let you know that it was a great presentation and she had a meeting to get to, so she had to sign off early.
Okay.
Oh, good.
And let's
Other
see.
questions?
Yeah, Dr. Opata says, do you have plans to give this presentation, especially the last slide on recommendations to departments on campus?
Michael, that's a great question. I actually put Dr. Will and I in the Inclusive Excellence rotation for the Center for Academic Excellence. So we were going to try to present this as a faculty workshop. I don't know. I guess because we're still in this pandemic, we haven't had a whole lot of turnout. But if you can think of some creative ways, and Lindsay, who is here with us, is the Associate Director for Faculty Development in the CAE, any ideas that you all may have about how to get this in front of more people, we're really open to doing that.
Okay, and it looks like that's all the questions this afternoon, and we're coming up on 4 o'clock. And I guess if anybody has questions afterwards, they can contact the two of you directly.
Yes, please. If you have a passion to help make this even more successful, please reach out to us to get the information out to others and to help these Black males. We do have a first year seminar connected to the class as well. So if there's definitely other ways that we can get you plugged in.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
y'all so much.
everybody.
Thank you all so much for being here.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.